People-pleasing often begins as a subtle emotional habit, but at its core, it is deeply rooted in the fear of rejection. This fear doesn't always appear loudly or dramatically. Instead, it quietly shapes decisions, behaviors, and even identity over time. A person who constantly seeks to please others is often driven by an internal belief that their value depends on how much they are accepted, liked, or approved of by those around them. This belief may have developed from early life experiences, perhaps moments where approval was conditional, love felt earned rather than given, or criticism left a lasting mark. As a result, the individual learns to adapt, to mold themselves into what others expect. Because it feels safer than risking disapproval, saying yes becomes a shield against conflict, and compliance becomes a way to maintain connection. However, this pattern comes with a hidden cost. When decisions are consistently made based on how others will react rather than what truly feels right, a disconnect begins to form within. The person may appear agreeable, kind, and accommodating on the outside, but internally they may feel anxious, drained, or even invisible. This is because their authentic thoughts, desires, and boundaries are being suppressed in order to maintain harmony. Over time, this suppression leads to emotional exhaustion. The mind is constantly calculating. Will they be upset if I say no? Oh, what will they think of me? Am I doing enough? And this mental burden becomes overwhelming. The fear of rejection turns into a cycle where the more you try to please, the more dependent you become on external validation and the more fragile your sense of self becomes. Another important aspect of this fear is that it often exaggerates consequences. The mind convinces you that saying no will lead to disappointment, conflict, or even abandonment. In reality, most situations are far less extreme. People may feel momentarily disappointed, but that does not equate to rejection of your entire being. Yet for someone trapped in people-pleasing, even the smallest sign of disapproval can feel deeply personal. This sensitivity reinforces the behavior, making it harder to break free. You begin to associate your worth with how smoothly interactions go, how little conflict you create, and how much you can accommodate others. But this is not a sustainable or truthful measure of your value. It places your identity in the hands of others, leaving you constantly adjusting, constantly performing, and never truly at rest. At the same time, it is important to understand that the desire to please others is not inherently negative. It often comes from a place of kindness, empathy, and a genuine wish to maintain relationships. The problem arises when this desire overrides self-respect. When kindness toward others becomes neglect of oneself, it stops being healthy and starts becoming harmful. True connection does not require you to erase yourself. In fact, meaningful relationships are built on honesty, mutual respect, and the ability to express both agreement and disagreement. When you hide your true feelings just to keep others comfortable, you are not strengthening the relationship. You are weakening its authenticity. Closely connected to this is the realization that you cannot make everyone happy, no matter how hard you try. This is a truth that many people intellectually understand but emotionally struggle to accept. Human beings are diverse, with different values, expectations, moods, and perspectives. What pleases one person may disappoint another. Even the same person may react differently depending on the day, their circumstances, or their own internal struggles. This means that trying to satisfy everyone is not only exhausting but also impossible. It sets you up for failure from the very beginning because the goal itself is unattainable. When you attempt to make everyone happy, you end up constantly shifting your behavior to match whoever is in front of you. You may agree with opinions you don't truly hold, take on responsibilities you don't have the capacity for, or silence your own needs to avoid discomfort. In doing so, you lose consistency in who you are. People may see different versions of you, but you may struggle to recognize your true self. This lack of authenticity can create confusion, not only for you, but also for those around you. Ironically, in trying to be liked by everyone, you may end up feeling disconnected from genuine connection because no one is truly seeing the real you. Moreover, the pursuit of universal approval often leads to neglecting the most important relationship you have, the one with yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you ignore your own limits, you send yourself a message that your needs are less important. Over time, this erodes self-trust. You may begin to feel uncertain about your own preferences, unsure of what you actually want, because you are so accustomed to prioritizing others. This internal confusion can lead to frustration and even resentment. You might start to feel unappreciated or taken for granted, not realizing that part of the reason is that your boundaries were never clearly established in the first place. Another layer to this is the emotional toll of constant effort without guaranteed results. Even after going out of your way to please others, there will still be moments when someone is unhappy, critical, or dissatisfied. When this happens, it can feel especially painful because of the effort you invested. You may think, after everything I did, it still wasn't enough. This can lead to a sense of hopelessness where no matter how much you give, you feel like you are falling short. The truth is not that you are insufficient, but that the expectation itself to please everyone is unrealistic. Letting go of this expectation does not mean becoming careless or indifferent to others. It means recognizing the limits of your responsibility. You are responsible for your actions, your intentions, and your integrity, but not for controlling how everyone feels about you. People will have their own reactions, shaped by their own experiences and perspectives. Accepting this allows you to act more authentically, without the constant pressure to manage everyone's emotions. There is also a quiet freedom in accepting that not everyone will like you. This may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to seeking approval, but it is also deeply liberating. It allows you to stop performing and start living more honestly. When you no longer measure your worth by universal acceptance, you can focus on being genuine. And interestingly, authenticity tends to attract deeper, more meaningful connections. People who appreciate you for who you truly are will stay, while those who only connected with the version of you that was trying to please may drift away. This is not a loss, but the necessary filtering process that brings more alignment into your life. In the end, both of these realizations, the fear of rejection driving people pleasing and the impossibility of making everyone happy, point toward the same truth. Peace does not come from external approval. It comes from internal alignment. When your actions reflect your true values, when your words match your feelings, and when your boundaries protect your well-being, you begin to experience a different kind of stability. It is not dependent on how others react, but grounded in your own sense of self. This is where true peace and freedom begin to emerge. Constant approval seeking drains your energy in ways that are often invisible at first, but deeply impactful over time. When your sense of worth becomes tied to how others perceive you, your mind rarely finds rest. Every interaction turns into a subtle performance where you are not just being yourself, but carefully monitoring how you are being received. You begin to analyze tone, expressions, reactions, and even silence, searching for signs that you are accepted or appreciated. This ongoing mental scanning consumes a significant amount of emotional energy. Instead of being present in the moment, you are preoccupied with maintaining an image, adjusting your behavior, and ensuring that no one feels displeased. This constant state of alertness can feel like a quiet pressure that never fully lifts. Over time, this pressure leads to exhaustion. You may find yourself feeling unusually tired, even when you haven't done anything physically demanding. This is because emotional labor, especially the kind that involves suppressing your true thoughts and constantly adapting to others, is incredibly draining. The energy you spend trying to gain approval could have been used for personal growth, creativity, or simply resting your mind. Instead, it gets consumed in maintaining a version of yourself that feels acceptable to others. The more you rely on external validation, the more unstable your energy becomes because it is now dependent on something you cannot fully control. A compliment may lift you temporarily, but a small criticism or lack of recognition can bring you down just as quickly. This cycle creates a dependency that is difficult to break. When approval is given, it feels rewarding, reinforcing the behavior. When it is absent, it feels like something is wrong, pushing you to try harder. This emotional roller coaster prevents you from developing a steady sense of self-worth. You are constantly moving between highs and lows based on how others respond to you. As a result, your inner peace becomes fragile. It is easily disturbed because it is not rooted within you, but in the unpredictable reactions of others. The need for approval becomes like a silent addiction. You keep seeking it, hoping it will finally make you feel secure, but it never fully satisfies. Another consequence of this pattern is that it limits your ability to make authentic decisions. When you are focused on gaining approval, your choices are influenced more by what will be accepted than by what is right for you. This can lead to missed opportunities, unfulfilled desires, and a lingering sense that you're not living the life you truly want. You may avoid taking risks, expressing honest opinions, or pursuing paths that might invite criticism. In doing so, you protect yourself from disapproval, but you also limit your growth. True confidence cannot develop in an environment where your actions are constantly filtered through the expectations of others. Saying yes when you mean a no creates inner conflict that slowly erodes your emotional well-being. On the surface, agreeing to something may seem like the easiest way to avoid tension or disappointment. It keeps interactions smooth and prevents immediate discomfort. However, beneath that surface, a different experience is unfolding. When you say yes against your true feelings, you are essentially overriding your own needs and boundaries. This creates a split within you. One part that is trying to maintain harmony with others, and another part that feels unheard and neglected. This internal contradiction is what leads to inner conflict. At first, this conflict may appear as a mild sense of discomfort or hesitation. But when it becomes a repeated pattern, it grows into frustration and even resentment. You may begin to feel overwhelmed by commitments you didn't truly want to make, or irritated by people who seem to expect too much from you. In reality, the issue is not just their expectations, but the fact that your own boundaries were not honored. Each time you say yes when you mean no, you send yourself a message that your preferences are not important. Over time, this weakens your ability to trust your own voice. You may start to question your instincts or feel disconnected from what you truly want. This inner conflict also affects your emotional clarity. When your actions don't align with your feelings, it becomes harder to understand yourself. You may feel confused about why you are unhappy or stressed, especially when you appear to be doing everything right on the outside. This confusion can lead to self-doubt, where you start to wonder if the problem is within you, rather than recognizing the misalignment between your actions and your truth. The longer this continues, the more it can impact your mental health, leading to burnout, anxiety, or a persistent sense of dissatisfaction. There is also a relational impact to this pattern. While saying yes may keep things peaceful in the short term, it can create imbalance in the long term. People may come to expect your constant agreement or availability, not necessarily because they are intentionally taking advantage, but because that is the pattern that has been established. This can make it even harder to change later, as any attempt to set boundaries may feel like a sudden shift. However, true relationships require honesty. When you consistently hide your true feelings, you prevent others from fully understanding you. This limits the depth and authenticity of your connections. Learning to say no is not just about refusing requests. It is about restoring alignment within yourself. It is about allowing your actions to reflect your true thoughts and feelings, even if it introduces temporary discomfort. This discomfort is a natural part of growth. It may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you are used to avoiding conflict, but it is also a sign that you are beginning to honor yourself. Each time you choose honesty over automatic agreement, you strengthen your sense of self. You begin to feel more grounded, more clear, and more at peace, because there is no longer a constant battle between what you feel and what you do. In the broader sense, both of these patterns, seeking constant approval and saying yes when you mean no, stem from a similar place: the desire to maintain external harmony at the expense of internal balance. Breaking free from these habits requires a shift in focus. Instead of asking, "How can I make everyone else comfortable?" the question becomes, "What is true for me in this moment?" This shift does not make you selfish. It makes you authentic. And authenticity is the foundation of genuine peace and freedom. You lose your identity trying to fit into others' expectations, and this loss does not happen suddenly. It unfolds gradually, often without you even realizing it. At first, it may seem like simple adjustments. Agreeing with opinions you don't fully share, changing your preferences to match the group, or holding back parts of yourself to avoid standing out. These small compromises feel harmless in isolation, but over time they accumulate. Each time you suppress your authentic thoughts or reshape your behavior to gain acceptance, you move a little further away from who you truly are. Eventually, you may reach a point where you struggle to recognize your own voice because it has been overshadowed by the expectations and preferences of others. This disconnection from your identity can create a deep sense of confusion. You may find yourself asking questions like, what do I actually want? Or what do I really believe? Because your decisions have been guided more by external influences than internal clarity. When your sense of self is built around pleasing others, it becomes unstable. It shifts depending on who you are with, what environment you are in, and what is expected of you in that moment. While this adaptability may seem like a strength on the surface, it often comes at the cost of authenticity. Instead of being grounded in a consistent sense of self, you become reactive, constantly adjusting to fit in. This loss of identity also affects your confidence. True confidence comes from knowing who you are and standing by it, even when it is not universally accepted. But when your identity is shaped by others' expectations, your confidence becomes fragile. It depends on how well you are meeting those expectations, which means it can easily be shaken by criticism or disapproval. You may feel confident in one setting where you are accepted, but insecure in another where expectations differ. This inconsistency creates an ongoing sense of instability, making it difficult to feel truly secure within yourself. Another important aspect of this experience is the emotional cost of hiding parts of who you are. When you feel that certain thoughts, feelings, or traits are not acceptable, you begin to suppress them. This suppression can lead to a sense of emptiness, as if something essential is missing. You may feel like you are living on the surface, presenting a version of yourself that is incomplete. Over time, this can lead to dissatisfaction, even if everything appears fine externally. You may have relationships, responsibilities, and achievements, yet still feel unfulfilled because you are not fully expressing your true self within those spaces. Reclaiming your identity requires a conscious effort to reconnect with your inner voice. This involves paying attention to your genuine thoughts, preferences, and feelings, even when they differ from those around you. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to seeking approval, but it is an essential step toward authenticity. As you begin to honor your true self, you may notice shifts in your relationships and environment. Some connections may deepen, while others may fade. But what emerges is a life that feels more aligned and meaningful. Instead of constantly adapting to fit in, you begin to create spaces where you truly belong as you are. People-pleasing also builds silent resentment, a feeling that often goes unacknowledged until it becomes overwhelming. On the surface, you may appear cooperative, helpful, and agreeable, but beneath that, there may be a growing sense of frustration. This resentment does not arise because you are unkind or unwilling to support others. It arises because your own needs and boundaries are being consistently overlooked. Each time you agree to something you don't want or press others at your own expense, a small amount of frustration is added. Over time, these small moments accumulate, creating a deeper emotional tension. What makes this resentment particularly challenging is that it is often directed both outward and inward. You may feel irritated with others for expecting too much or not recognizing your efforts. But at the same time, you may feel frustrated with yourself for not speaking up or setting limits. This internal conflict can be difficult to process because it involves acknowledging patterns that may have been in place for a long time. You may have believed that being accommodating was the right thing to do, only to realize that it has come at the cost of your own well-being. This silent resentment can also affect your relationships in subtle ways. Even if you do not express your frustration openly, it can influence your tone, your energy, and your level of engagement. You may become less enthusiastic, more withdrawn, or even passive-aggressive in certain situations. These changes can create confusion for others who may not understand why the dynamic has shifted. In some cases, resentment may eventually surface in sudden outbursts, where emotions that have been suppressed for a long time are expressed all at once. This can be surprising for both you and those around you, but it is often the result of prolonged imbalance. Another layer to this experience is the sense of unfairness that can develop. You may begin to feel that you are giving more than you are receiving, or that your efforts are not being appreciated. While there may be truth in this perception, it is important to recognize that people often respond to the patterns that are presented to them. If you consistently present yourself as someone who is always available, always agreeable, and rarely sets limits, others may come to rely on that behavior. This does not necessarily mean they are intentionally taking advantage, but it does highlight the importance of establishing clear boundaries. Addressing this resentment requires honesty, both with yourself and with others. It involves acknowledging your own needs and recognizing that they are valid. It also involves understanding that setting boundaries is not a rejection of others, but a way of creating balance. When you begin to express your limits and make choices that align with your well-being, the underlying tension starts to ease. Resentment is often a signal that something needs to change, that your current way of relating to others is not sustainable. Letting go of people-pleasing does not mean abandoning kindness or empathy. It means redefining what those qualities look like in a healthy way. True kindness includes yourself. It recognizes that your time, energy, and emotional well-being are valuable and that they deserve to be protected. When you stop overextending yourself and start acting from a place of authenticity, your interactions become more genuine. You are no longer giving out of obligation or fear, but from a place of choice. This shift not only reduces resentment, but also strengthens the quality of your relationships, because they are now based on honesty and mutual respect rather than silent sacrifice.